We'll begin with a story about Miss Ann Nixon Cooper. At 104 years old, she has perspective on our times that few of us will ever enjoy. Much of it was acquired in Atlanta, Georgia, during the days when segregation was imposed by law. Today, an oral history project at Atlanta Spelman College is collecting the memories of many women such as Miss Cooper. They all lived through the so-called Jim Crow era. But even within their wise ranks, Miss Cooper has been designated the wisest of the wise. So let's hear from her and learn more about how Spelman College's project is preserving her history.
I am Ann Nixon Cooper, born January the 9th, 1902, in Bedford County, Tennessee.
At 104 years of age, Miss Ann Nixon Cooper has stories to tell. Having spent her entire adult life in Atlanta, Georgia, she has borne witness to numerous historical events and incredible social change. She recently shared some of these life experiences as a mentor in an ongoing oral history project conducted by the Independent Scholars Program at Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia. The project, Women of Wisdom, connects young scholars with seniors who have important stories to tell from their personal experiences.
Her stories date back to the 1920s, before then to the 1910s. So she gives us a rich harvest of wisdom. She is therefore the wisest of the wise. She was orphaned at the age of 10. She lived in Tennessee until she was 19. She's been living in Atlanta since 1922.
I was, say, maybe 11 years old just before my mother died. I was at my aunt's house, and a lady came by taking census. She asked me who I lived with, and I said, my aunt. She's taking census. What is your aunt like? Well, you know, she's just my aunt. That's all I thought about. She wanted to know what she looked like. And I said, she looks like you. So she said, so she's a mulatto. Well, I never heard that word before. I know Aunt Joyce wasn't just but I didn't know what she was. I thought white, black, we've all mixed up there together. Aunt Joyce's mother was a great big 300-pound lady, and I thought Granny was just a white woman, that's all.
The child of freed slaves, it was Aunt Joyce's parents who moved the family closer to Nashville to start a better life.
Her daddy asked the old master on a plantation there to let him leave the plantation so he could send his children to school and they could get jobs. So he gave him $500 and his freedom.
Those stories are important because we're losing our elders, for one thing. Our elders are dying off, and we need those stories in print. We need to know what our elders went through in the 30s and 40s.
These are, in many cases, the unsung heroes of this group of women. It's not if you opened up the Ebony magazine or Time or the Person of the Year, you would see these names of the women who we have chosen. It is our job to tell the story of women who changed the world one by one, but who didn't make the headlines.
At 19, Ann met her future husband, Albert Cooper, while he was still in dental school. They soon moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and started a family. But here, segregation was much more overt than when she had experienced growing up in rural Tennessee. Like many African-American women living in the segregated South, Ann and her family diligently worked to overcome racial prejudice and gain the respect they deserved.
Well, we got a club, our literary club. It's a club of 25 women, and they had all been school teachers, all had degrees and everything. And so they made a point in making the black women respected downtown. See, you take your children downtown, they couldn't even drink from a fountain or anything. So the women of the Utopian Literary Club decided We will not buy anything at any of these stores where they can't respect us as ladies. So, the president of this literary club, she said, don't go downtown looking like you just came out of the kitchen or something. Dress up, put on a hat, put on your white gloves, and go down there and look like a lady. All right. Here we go, all dressed up sometime. White lady said, well, you look so nice. Thank you, you look nice too. So, but that went on and on. You ain't gonna buy nothing until they thought they better do something about it.
Ann Nixon Cooper is a living encyclopedia on life in the Jim Crow South. For the scholars of Spelman College, the legacy she and her fellow women of wisdom leave is an invaluable insight into how far we have come as a nation.
We need oral history today, desperately. And the reason we need oral history today is that this generation is addicted to television. And the only way to hear those voices, the sound of those voices, is through oral history research. So we desperately need it.
Joining me now to talk about the importance of saving stories such as Miss Cooper's before they vanish forever are two specialists in the preservation of history. Kathy Kirst is a folklife specialist with the American Folklife Center at the United States Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. The American Folklife Center maintains an archive of folk culture containing cultural materials from all parts of the United States, as well as communities from around the world. Betty Belanis is an education specialist with the Office of Folklife and Cultural Heritage at the Smithsonian Institution, also located in Washington. Her office conducts research, presentation, and conservation of American and worldwide folklife traditions. Thank you both for being here. So are oral histories alive and well in our country still?
Very alive. I think they're more alive now than they have been for a long time. Because people have access to tape recorders, video cameras. People are interested in documenting. People have flashcards and all kinds of new gizmos that they can use to document interactions between family members.
So many have complained that in the United States, the elderly are not well respected, or that a lot of people don't want to listen to their stories. What's your take on that?
Well, I think that's true to some extent compared to other countries where elders are more venerated. But I do think that people, once they take the time to start listening to their own elders or elders from other communities, are really going to find some interesting stories that they wouldn't know otherwise. So,
people in older adults have been thought of as living libraries or libraries of wisdom. What kind of things do you think that they can pass down to other generations?
Oh, there are all kinds of things. I mean, there's family histories. There's, you know, why so-and-so has a nickname. There are experiences that elders have. You know, what happened, what were their memories of when Martin Luther King was assassinated?
Sure.
Or, so there are aspects from history that everyday people have had that convey a lot to a family and are very valuable in preserving.
Talking about history, one of the things they always say is that if we don't remember history, especially things that are not so great, like the Holocaust and Jim Crow, that they may in turn repeat themselves. And so we have to keep that in mind. From an intergenerational respect, how do you suggest that we pass down these histories?
well, I think that children should talk to their parents and to their grandparents and find out what they know. More than just a school assignment, they should take it upon themselves. Well, the grandparents are still here to ask them questions.
Well, I know that you did something special in your family, and it's called Me and Daddy, and it was something simple that you put together, right?
Right, and things don't have to be complicated to be put together. This was, you know, really simple, just taking extra pictures from when you get double pictures, and then having my daughter, who was very small at the time, just dictate, you know, what she thought was happening in the picture with her dad. And it was a lot of fun, and those kind of projects can really just be a keepsake for the rest of your
Forever and ever.
life.
She gets to look back on it. Tell me a little bit about what you guys are doing at the Smithsonian.
Well, we do the Smithsonian Folklife Festival every year, and speaking of venerating elders, most of the people that are our participants are older because they have the stories to pass on, and a lot of times they bring their children or grandchildren with them to show how things are being passed on. So we have taken a lot of the material from from past festivals and done teacher workshops and other programs with them. But just coming to the festival, which happens every summer right here in Washington, D.C., you can learn so much and then take what you learned there from other people's grandparents and think, wow, maybe my grandma or grandpa has something interesting to say.
We're going to take a short break, but I want to be right back with you. This is so interesting. It's time for us to take another short break. Stay with us because we'll be back in a moment to continue our discussion about the importance of oral history with Kathy Kirst and Betty Balanis.
Who said, "Sometimes I feel discriminated against, but it does not make me angry. It merely astonishes me. How can anyone deny themselves the pleasure of my company? It's beyond me." A. Maya Angelou. B. Alice Walker. C. Zora Neale Hurston. Do you know the answer? It's C. Zora Neale Hurston.
Hello again. In this first half of today's Daily Apple, we're talking about the practice of oral history and its value in preserving irreplaceable parts of our past. Our guests are Kathy Kirst of the American Folklife Center at the United States Library of Congress and Betty Balanis of the Office of Folklife and Cultural Heritage at the Smithsonian Institution. Welcome back, you both. Tell me a little bit about what you guys are doing at the Library of Congress in terms of oral histories and folklife.
Well, the American Folklife Center has a large archive, the Archive of Folk Culture, that goes way back. And in terms of oral history, our collections are very rich in spoken word interviews and so on. For instance, we have ex-slave narratives that were collected in the 1930s as WPA projects. We have a collection of man in the street interviews the day after Pearl Harbor.
Very
Basically,
interesting.
people being asked on the street, what did you think of what happened?
So a plethora of history there. I want to talk a little bit about some of the different ways, creative ways. We talked about your family and something your daughter and your husband, I assume, had done together. What are some other creative ways? I know that songs bring family together as well. What else?
Food, I think, is very important. It's one we were just discussing, Kathy and I, how it's one of the last things to leave a family, some of the old recipes. And this is just an example, again, of something really simple that you can do and using technology, scan in some family photos and then collect family recipes, which makes a really nice thing to pass on at a family reunion, especially for the young people to have who are going to go out and maybe try to cook some of these things.
Yeah, so you can almost cook things from the past, talk about your memories, and they always say too that the smells of food bring up really positive and familial memories, don't they?
Definitely.
What are some other experiences that you know of that you think would be helpful?
Well, what I was wanting to talk about a little bit is having objects that may seem just like ordinary objects, but belong to your family. Sometimes an object like these shoes can elicit all kinds of stories. These shoes were given to my daughter, who was adopted as a 3.5-year-old by my mother. So I interviewed my mother, and she talked about giving these shoes and about accepting Anita into our family, which brought the sort of the intergenerational link was made, where Anita loves hearing people talk about how they waited for her to come and then celebrated her when she arrived. And my mother had a chance to talk about these memories with Anita.
And she had quite style with those patent leather shoes, didn't
Yes.
she? So what is this here that you've brought?
I just brought some family photos of my dad and my mom and dad, because family photos are another important way to get at a discussion. Sometimes it's hard to just say, Grandma, tell me a story, but if you have a picture in front of you, then they can tell the story of that person in the picture and what was happening, and even where they were and what it smelled like, even
Yeah,
if, you
it's
know.
funny to think that so many of those pictures will be in black and white still, as
Definitely.
opposed to color. And by the time Anita, your adopted daughter, is big, they'll all be digitalized and will all look very thin and happy. Let me ask about big oral history projects that are going on across our country and throughout the world. Can you tell me a little bit about some?
At the American Folklife Center, we have the Veterans History Project, which is a huge, huge project where people are encouraged to go out and interview veterans in their family, in their neighborhood, whatever, and send them into the Library of Congress. And on our website, American Folklife Center website, there is a link to the Veterans History Project where you can learn all about it.
What if you are one of our viewers, a mature adult, and you're watching this, and you know you've got some amazing history to tell your grandchild, but there's always that little barrier that you don't want to sound egotistical, or they may not be interested. How do you break that barrier?
I think there are several ways. One is you can just start writing down what you remember or typing it into your computer at this point, and give it to them for a present. It would make a great present with pictures and so forth. Or just going through a family photo album, or cooking with your grandchild, you know, passing on a recipe by actually teaching them how to cook something. Just approach it some way, or through an object like Kathy was talking about. Just breaking that ice, as you said, is really important in getting over that.
Sure. I know there's some new technologies that are out to help the process move along. What are some of those? You talked a little bit before about it, but
there are so many new recording devices and video devices. We almost can't keep up with them in the library. I mean, trying to keep the technology, keep the materials available in the archive.
But an individual can actually get a service, right? They have services that are out there now that will videotape. If I wanted to get a relative of mine videotaped, you can call a service, correct?
Oh, sure. You certainly can.
So what are some of how do you prioritize? When you think of a lifetime of wisdom and lifetime of experience, how does a mature adult prioritize where to start?
I think you have to think about what's most important that you want to pass on to future generations, and start there. And then find out what your grandchildren, whoever you're wanting to pass this on to is interested in, and take it from there. Because when you find that common bond, if it be cooking or quilting or whatever might get the younger generation in, you start there and build out.
And do you have any additional suggestions in that way?
Well, I think it's always amazing how much our parents or our uncles and aunts have done, or grandparents, that we don't even know about. And sometimes just having a tape recorder, a very easy, easily used tape recorder, and just sort of talking, well, Grandma, what do you remember from when you were in high school? And she'll say, well, I'm nervous or whatever. And then what you do is you just continue and say, well, I just like to know, what are your memories? I don't care about dates. I don't care about names specifically, or making it correct. I want to know something about what you felt like when you were a teenager.
Sure.
And then you can gradually go into it that way, and make people feel comfortable in front of the tape recorder.
So I'm listening to you guys, and I'm looking at this, and I'm thinking, well, I guess we're a generation apart, because let me grab it, because I don't know what it is. And I'm thinking, if we're going to talk about oral history, someone's got to pass down for me what this actually is.
That's actually part of a piano I had when I was young, and it's quite an old piano, before my time. But I brought it because I saved it for my piano, which got junked, to tell my daughter about. She never saw the piano, but how important it was that I got this piano, how excited I was to get a piano finally. I wanted one for a long time.
So that's another great idea. I mean, I'm today still in my 30s, and I've never thought about really sort of collecting little mementos throughout my life to show my nieces, nephews, children in the future when I'm in my 60s, 70s, and 80s. So we really need to start young, bringing our mementos up with us, don't we?
Yes.
What are some of the other projects at the Smithsonian that you guys are doing?
Well, right now we're working on a project that's commemorating the 400th anniversary of Jamestown, and as part of that, the Jamestown 2007 project has prompted a lot of communities to start doing oral history projects, speaking of, larger projects. So we're hoping to highlight some of those projects and some of the commemorative quilts that people are making and so forth. But it's prompting a lot of people to, to do this kind of work around the state, and we hope to highlight some of those.
Talking about that, clearly we're a country from, cultures, we're very diverse, we're a melting pot. How do people bring their own cultural history into their environment, their home environment or their community environment?
Well, very often people do already, and it's sometimes it's a question of noticing it. The way they decorate, the way they arrange flowers. For instance, a grandmother might always serve pastry with coffee,
right,
or with tea, and that it just wouldn't be right without that.
Or if
and
they're
that
from
might
Greece, baklava, right?
Exactly.
So it may be what they serve on the dinner
Exactly.
table. This is great. Thank you so much for being here. This information is priceless. We appreciate it.
Thank you.